I'm going to abuse my position as the chair and ask the first question, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience shortly after that. So the first question, which I'd like you all to answer, if possible, and it's basically, I think, that's sort of the key bit of advice. So the question is, beyond getting online, what is the most important thing a business should do digitally to improve their profitability? If we can start with you, Simon, and then we'll come in this direction.
Yeah, get a good page on Facebook. No, I think actually I want to echo something that Herb said earlier, and something that I've learned in my 6 months in Facebook is talk to other people who are going through the same experience as you, and what works for them will most likely work for you. So actually this kind of forum is a fantastic opportunity to hear, not just from people like us, but also from others in this room about what they're doing and what works. And then try it for yourself.
Thank you. My particular interest is procurement. And so I would say from a procurement perspective, the most important thing is to take the time to investigate the opportunities out there. You will need to take the time to do that because when you first start looking at the array of websites and portals and mechanisms that you have to use, it does appear quite confusing. But actually, if you take a bit of time, and when I say time, I only mean a few hours, to play around a bit, understand what's required and what's needed, it almost opens up a whole new marketplace that perhaps you're not considering at this moment in time. So it's take some time and be organised, because procurement, it's a bit dull, and it's very much about passwords and doing things on time and keeping information in the correct format. That sort of underpins success, really. And so you've got to take the time, but be organised in how you approach, that sort of investigative piece of work that you need to do.
I think for me that, coming from the perspective of, effectively I'm a small business owner, is that your time's limited. And so for me, I think the important thing is not just getting online. That's obviously an important first step. But that what you do, you take the time to try and make it really good. Because the problem you don't know about is once you are online, if your presence isn't very good or it's not well targeted or not very effective, you won't really know about all the people that aren't doing things with you because they don't like what you've done online. That could be as simple as having a poor LinkedIn profile. Or whatever it might be, whatever medium it might be. Obviously, I'm kind of again keeping my comments here to the online marketing space. But that would be, for me, I think, is around focusing on the quality of the presentation that you're putting out there.
From my point of view, I think the first step is really, really simple. Is to engage with a specialist service provider that can assist you to complement what you're doing already, not replacing what you're going to complement it. And to kind of use it in a niche requirement that you have, because they would have invested in the infrastructure on your behalf, so you can use it to make sure that you as an organization are a lot more agile and flexible, that you can respond to the changing market conditions that we currently see a lot better and a lot cheaper, whilst increasing productivity and also then increasing profitability.
Tricky going last, great answers. What I'd add is perspective about it. A lot of people are very fearful, they're scared about joining that online conversation. And I would say to take away the fear, think about it from a half-full glass perspective. And the fact that things are real-time, searchable, findable, means that people can come and find you. And that changes that business dynamic of that conversation. If you're the expert, if you're the person that people should be coming to, they can actually come and find you, and that can really help in terms of how you get your messaging out.
Thanks very much. Right, I want to open it up now. So I'll take questions in batches of 3. If I could ask you to introduce yourself, your name and your business, and then we'll get answers from the panel. Who'd like to go first? This is Barnsley. There's got to be somebody who's got a question. Yep, gentleman in the blue T-shirt at the back.
I didn't want to leave you hanging there with no one asking anything. So, I'm Rich from a company called Genius Division. We're a digital agency based in Barnsley. My questions are kind of a fun one, I guess. If the World Wide Web hadn't come along as it has, where do you think you guys would be now?
Okay, thanks for that, Rich. Let's just to give people a bit of time to think about that. Let's take another question. Sir, at the back in the white shirt. Right, back up the stairs.
Hello, I'm Mark from DM Squared. We're a design and marketing studio based in Barnsley. Just a question for the panel on the array of marketing that is available to people, so Facebook, Google, the rest of it. How do you guys see the challenges that, or how can we overcome the challenges around attributing first clicks and attributing the right metrics to the right places as a small business? Obviously, as a very high-powered brand, it's quite easy to have that finance in place to do so. But as a small business, how can we overcome those challenges?
Okay, Mark, thanks for that. Linda.
Two questions there. The first one, where would we be without the World Wide Web? So ultimately, it's all means of communication, and that's something that's evolved out of how can we communicate more easily. So if it wasn't that, I guess it's how else might we have been able to talk across boundaries, how else we would be been able to reach people. So I don't know what kind of technology it might have been, but something in communication might have been where we would be at, was the first question. In terms of the second one, my company, Cube Social, we do focus that the question that we first sought to answer was that as people moved onto social platforms, they were jumping on board, potentially first with Facebook because it's the third largest country, and that would be the first place they would think to go. And one of our questions was, what is that relevant to your contacts? Is that relevant to your clients? Where should you be spending your time? And so social profile discovery has become a key thing. You want to talk where your contacts want to listen to you. So it's vital that you actually go and find that out. And so that was one of the key things that we actually sought to answer in our software.
To answer the first question, I think without the World Wide Web, we'd still be sending faxes and letters on a regular basis. At the same time, I don't think we would have seen the financial downturn at the scale and the speed that we've seen over the last few years. Because without the system being that interconnected, I don't think the repercussions would have been quite as severe. So there are obviously benefits as well as downfalls. However, going forward, I think the World Wide Web will continue to drive a more connected world and continue to allow small organizations to sell into large marketplaces that they previously couldn't. So I think it is there to stay and it's there to grow. To answer the second question, I agree with my colleague here. I think it's absolutely vital that you understand your own target market and how you can best address and select that target market. As you said, as a small organization, you can't spread yourself thinly across a sort of a wide target market. We've got the same, we're a national service provider, but we're not international. So we focus on what we think we are particularly good at and trying to find the best means to actually address in that specific marketplace.
Yeah, so without the web, it's a pretty tough question for me to actually conceive of it. I assume I would probably be working at some company, possibly in marketing in New Jersey, which is where I'm from. I certainly would have probably never found the opportunities to come to this country, so on and so forth. So, and with regard to the second question, I think for me, again, I realize I'm kind of keeping my comments here to the social space, but what we've found is that for us, again, in our particular case, for whatever reason, we found Twitter to be a very comfortable place for us to be, and very naturally conversational, if you will. And so, and through that, so let me turn it around. So today, I would say practically every day, I'm getting somebody asking me to RT something, yeah, whether that's through a direct message or through an reply thing. And if they have either personal capital with me because I know them, they're a local friend of the things, or a local business contact, I typically will. If they have social capital with me via the internet, whether that be via Twitter or elsewhere, then I typically will. But I also get probably half that I just don't know who they are. I've got no relationship with them whatsoever, and they're just basically because of the presence we have through Thinking Digital on my own Twitter ID, and we run all the not all of them, but many of the TEDx events in the North, are looking to take advantage of that in a kind of, if you will, cheeky way. So for me, if you're a small business and you don't have X thousands of pounds to start doing outbound marketing, is find a form that you're comfortable in. Some people that's LinkedIn, for some people that's going to be Facebook, other people it would be Twitter, and so on and so forth. And start building a network of people that share your interests. And that, at some point you can then start to hopefully get those people to start to say, well, they might start naturally retweeting some of the things that you're tweeting about. And also at some point they might be willing to entertain a more concerted marketing campaign on your behalf if they like you. And so that's certainly one thing for us. We invest a lot of time. Again, it's not because we've got this, if you will, mercenary aim of wanting to build up this social capital, but that naturally, because we are conversational on Twitter, we've been very successful to convert that at key moments, typically once or twice a year. So we'll have an ask, we're launching our speakers, or we're opening up the early bird, or whatever it might be, and we'll make an ask of people out there, and it'll literally be just a bunch, we might spend a day asking 50 people or 100 people to retweet us via DMs or via email, whatever it might be. And if you've done, if you're a member of that community, it's surprising how effective that can be, and for no money other than your time.
In terms of procurement, really procurement's always been around. People have always had mechanisms whereby they buy things, and certainly public sector procurement has always been quite bureaucratic in how that process and procedure needs to be undertaken, but understandably it's primarily taxpayers' money, and therefore those systems need to be in place. I think what the internet has done is opened up the opportunity to many more organisations than could previously access, because before, if you were an organisation in one part of the country and there was a tender opportunity at the opposite end, unless you knew that person personally, you probably would never find out about it. Whereas now, opportunities have to be advertised very well. They have to be advertised anyway, but also the sort of web portals that are used are very well known. And so there's a very easy way of finding out about opportunities. I think one of the things that people must be very mindful of, though, also, is that it's not to hide behind that relationship. Just because you can respond to an opportunity, if the organisation that you're responding to isn't aware of you or doesn't know anything about you, then it won't be received as well as if you've got a presence. And so I think this is where social media, personal contact is also needed, as well as responding through the applications and the pre-qualification questionnaires that you have to do. So it's always been around. It will continue to be around. Really, the internet's just another tool in the sort of in the pack to help it run more effectively.
I think that first question was fantastic. What a profound question for us personally, but also as Barnsley and as a nation. Personally, obviously, the company I work for would not exist. And I wouldn't be able to have the cool thing that my teenage kids think, that I do Facebook for a living, which is my 14-year-old daughter now likes me, which is great. But kind of more seriously, I do think one of the things we ought to really celebrate is that the internet's been a fantastic success story for our country. We are the strongest internet economy in the world. Not necessarily, we haven't got, Google, Facebook, these companies didn't start here. But actually, in terms of British companies and British consumers engaging in this space, nobody beats us, right? And that's an absolutely brilliant opportunity for companies like yourselves in Barnsley. You've got a brilliant market. Any other city like Barnsley, or is it a town or a city? Town, and it's apologies. Any other town like Barnsley, anywhere else in the world that has gone through what Barnsley's gone through in the last 30 years, and I remember it, I came here as a kid in the 70s and the 80s, you would never have had the opportunity to have turned this town around commercially since the decline of the old industries in the way you have without the internet. So I think the internet has been the lifeblood for towns like this and communities like this, and we should be celebrating every day that we live in a country where the internet has been embraced the way it has. So I just think clearly none of us would be here having this discussion without it, and it's a brilliant thing.
Right, I'm keen to bring as many people in as possible, so can I take the next set of questions? Yeah, sir, gentleman there in the blue shirt.
Hiya, my name's Andy Chesterton. I run a company called Praxoft. We're essentially a software and IT support company. Recently, there's been quite a few high-profile things where, well, I'll just go back a bit. One of the things Dan said is that internet survived all through the ups and downs of the financial recession and everything. One of the reasons for its survival, I believe, is the freedom on the internet. And what do you people think about regulation of the internet? Now it's become the way to communicate. Governments are getting a bit worried and are trying to regulate parts of it. And what do you think the dangers are to particularly your particular side of business? For example, if governments decide Facebook should record every single conversation ever and keep it for 5 years.
Okay, thanks for that, Andy. Gentleman at the back in the pinkish tie.
Hello, Dave Grimes from Growth Accelerator, which is a national service to support high growth businesses. My question would be, there's been a couple of mentions that advertising and marketing can be done with very little cost using the internet and some of the ideas and sites and portals we've been talking about this morning. But that can be very labour intensive as well. And time is just as important to small businesses as cash is. How would you suggest that small businesses actually make best use of their time in using the internet to help them grow their business?
Right, good question. And then right at the back there in the white shirt.
Thanks. I've just got a couple of questions. I'm Kerry Batchelder from HMA Digital Marketing and Digital Agency in Barnsley. The first one is we've had a lot of discussion, or more discussion about business to consumer marketing through online channels. I just wondered if the panel could comment a bit on B2B. And the other thing is, could also we hear your thoughts about current government support for the digital economy? Thanks.
Andy, I mean that's my day job. Obviously, is around policy and the internet. Yes, I think there is a danger that we see restrictions on the open internet, and there are a number of different types of kind of organisations and lobby groups around who would like to see more restrictions in place. I think it's a particular worry for ISPs actually, who. One of the strengths of the UK is we've got a very competitive broadband industry where you can get incredibly good deals, much cheaper broadband here than many other countries as a result of that. And if we impose too many burdens on those companies, I think that is problematic. Having said that, the internet it has grown up enormously. And most people's experience of the internet today, unless they are particularly looking for it, will be relatively safe. The chances of you coming across bad content on the internet are much smaller now than they used to be. And typically that's because the industry has found ways to ensure a better customer experience. Because after all, everybody in this industry and all of you want to have the best possible customer experience. So just to take an example, you're much less likely to ever see images of child abuse online because of the work of the Internet Watch Foundation. There's no law involved there, other than the fact that these are criminal activities. But the industry has come together, funded the Internet Watch Foundation, and found a way to block that kind of content. So I think that's the solution. It's industry-led, and should continue to be so. And we should be concerned about restrictions. I can't comment particularly on the law that was published, or the draft bill that was published yesterday. We haven't had a chance to look at it properly yet to understand what the implications are. But of course, we'll engage in that debate as it proceeds. I think it's probably better that I kind of pass the mic on to others to answer your question around how best to use, what are the best things to do if you're short of time, if you're a small business.
Well, I'll just pick up on that point actually about best things to do if you're short of time. Once again, in relation to procurement, because what we feel is very important is being tender ready. So it's knowing what pieces of information, what documents, what policies and procedures you need to have available to you so that you can respond quickly. Because one of the benefits of online procurement and e-procurement is that the opportunities come up And these can be small opportunities, say £10,000, £20,000, very accessible for small businesses. But often with those smaller contract sizes, the deadlines are very quick. They might be 1 week or 2 weeks maximum, really. And so you need to be ready to respond and to be able to send in a response as soon as possible. And so that's coming back to being tender ready, and I'll be talking about it later, but it's having, all the normal business information around accounts and policies and case studies and testimonials available. That may sound common sense, but to be perfectly honest, I would say 90% of businesses that I talk to and support on procurement don't have that information available, or they have it available and it's spread across the organisation, or only certain people in the organisation are allowed to access it. And so this tender-ready mindset is absolutely crucial to being able to take advantage of these opportunities that are coming up.
On the small business question and the time question, I think the answer to me is basically to either figure out where your customers or your potential customers are spending their time transacting in business like yours, or where your competitors seeing traction using some of these online tools, whether it be social or otherwise. Because ultimately, if you're not, then someone else will be filling that space for you, and it's a matter of whether or not you want to be there. So I think ultimately it's about either talking to people or just talking to your own customers or trying to find out from them. I mean, for us, ultimately, it was our own customers basically telling us, we're on Twitter and we're talking about you. So you can either jump and join this conversation or not and leave it to somebody else. I didn't actually, I know there was a question about the regulation, but which I don't have much out. Were there any others that we... Okay,
I'd like to make two comments. One in regards to governance of the internet. I think you've got to be mindful of the fact that the internet, as well as the most successful organizations around the internet, are all very US-centric. Now, of course, there's a lot of argument from the US side of things to keep it open and to keep as little governance as possible. At the same time, we as an organization, as business, have all got a responsibility for our own data. Now, we can protect that data in the UK and when we need to have it, and you have actually got an enormous amount of US organizations from the US Patriot Act having access to information if you should store it with Google and Amazon and others. There's, of course, a risk to your business as well, so you've got to be mindful of that. In regards to what can the government do to drive the digital economy, in particular for businesses, I'm actually a member of the industry member of the Parliamentary ICT Committee, and we certainly lobby on a regular basis for small and medium-sized providers to get access of some of the government spending on ICT in particular. You'll be amazed to see how many billions and billions of pounds are spent on an annual basis with multinational vendors such as Capgemini, such as Fujitsu and others, where the money, of course, is spent on local staff as well, but most of the profits actually go abroad back to other organizations rather being invested in the UK. And of course, there's a strong lobby to make sure that more and more of the ICT spend by the government is spent on UK businesses.
I'm looking at Tracy as I answer these three questions and how much she's going to charge me, because my answer to question 1 is Cube Social, my answer to question 2 is Cube Social, my answer to question 3 is also Cube Social. No, so question 1, in terms of governance and compliance, it is vital that, I guess there is that sense that there will be a requirement to be able to show that data, and one of the things that we have focused on is, how can you store that? What do you need to store? What are the conversations for your business that you need to have available to you? From a more broad market perspective, I think there's a sense also, though, what's interesting is, in many respects, it is quite a self-regulating environment. So people often will talk about, there was a conversation about trolls earlier, there's a conversation about whether competitors would say nasty things about your business. But the way the market tends to work is, if people are making up fictitious things about you, your business, other people tend to step in and deal with that. So there is that element of self-regulation in the business. In terms of the second question about small business, I think Herb's answer, I always agree with that. It's that spending and focusing on the things that are key to you and your contacts and your clients, knowing where they are, speaking in the right places. And of course, I've got a workshop with more tips about that later. And then question 3, in terms of the B2B world, I think the thing that is key to me in the social media space and on the online space is ultimately B2B. Business is about relationships. Relationships are based on conversations, and social media gives you that wealth of that conversation to get involved. And then your final element of your question about how the government gets involved. As a tech startup, we often joke about how one of the most backhanded compliments we receive is, oh my goodness, you're not a Silicon Valley tech startup, you're in the UK. And it is something I've been approached to talk about a bit more. The Department of Business Innovation and Skills has been talking to us about what can we do in the UK to make sure there isn't that kind of gap in terms of how the digital world is seen here. So I think that's an interesting space of how, through events like this, how we place ourselves so much more firmly in that digital arena.
Right, we've just got time for one more question. Yes, lady at the front.
The last 10 years I've worked in industry, so I've been able to go to my IT department and marketing department, and they'd make Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter look amazing and gain sales and inquiries. What advice have you got for people like myself running their own small business? How can I improve my skill set, my knowledge and understanding so that I too can gain those sales and inquiries and make my social media look as professional as companies like KitKat, like Microsoft?
I'm still holding the mic. So I guess for me, to keep it short, I would say come along and listen to what I'm saying next. And also I would say, the fact that people like Enterprising Barnsley, these great events for businesses, there is an amazing hub and enthusiasm and energy about how we need to kickstart things here and how we can start up and do more ourselves. And I think actually then join those online networks. There's a great camaraderie there. I've loved my effective water cooler moments online. So as a small team, how can we have that huge network around us that helps us and steps in? And so use that community as well.
I think it's important for every small business to kind of to show up to events like this, to learn from others, learn from success, but also learn from failures in terms of what has worked and what hasn't worked, which is absolutely important. And wherever you can, tap into the investment that other people have made on your behalf. So rather than starting everything from scratch, why don't you actually use something, be that on an infrastructure side, be that from an advertising point of view, be that from trying to approach different target markets, trying to learn from or tap into resource that other people have already built up that you pay for, but you don't have to make the investment from scratch yourself.
Yeah. So for us, I'd say it is invest. And it doesn't have to be invest necessarily loads of money, but invest in good design for obviously for your website, and make sure your website is mobile ready, and then be able to take that, particularly with your design and photography as well, across to if you have a Facebook presence for things like email headers and stuff like that. So it just looks professional. And we've been doing some work with Newcastle University, who did a lot of research. In specifically with regard to the healthcare area. And one of the tests they did was they looked at, they compared well-branded providers like Bupa and Boots and the NHS in the healthcare space versus no-name people, no-name brands that they just made up, but were well-designed. And they put them against each other. And people actually put more credibility, or at least as much credibility, in these unbranded but well-designed sites as they were willing to into things like an NHS site or the like. So to me, that was the most stark evidence that there actually is tremendous power in investing your time and maybe your money in good photography and good design to be able to extend your presence effectively as a small business.
I suppose I can only talk in this context about being a small business, and I've got my own small business now, and I've run one in the past, and I think it's about seeing how important it is to do Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, and doing it regularly, because lots of businesses I talk to, they start off and they're really keen, really enthusiastic, and then it just dies away. And so it's making sure that being active becomes part of your daily work. an important part of your daily work and not just something that you do when you've got a spare 5 minutes. Because it's building that presence over time and people knowing that you're going to respond and be adding content that will bring them back to you. And so I would say just from a personal experience, it's allocating some time every day or whenever to make sure that you do it regularly rather than start off with great gusto and then just forget when a client comes on board and you just don't have time to do it anymore.
I echo that, and given I'm last, I can give it a shameless plug. If you didn't manage to grab one of the goodie bags, actually all the material in there, apart from the bag itself, is available online. So the toolkit, go to the marketing page, find the toolkit, use the free ads. So there are some free advertising there for you to get used to that kind of product. So kind of jump in and give it a try.
We've run out of time. I hope people have found that useful. In a moment, Tracy's going to come up and let you know what's going to be happening next. But before she does, can I ask you please to thank the panel? Thank you.